Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show. John Henry Soto here with you as always. It is 7 a.m. here in Nashville, Tennessee. It is June 23rd, 2026. And we're going to jump right in today. I hope you're all doing well, getting the week started. It is Tuesday, so we're in it. We're in the week. And I hope it's going well for you. We're going to be talking about storytelling. Storytelling seems to be the thing now that everyone talks about. Now, it was always the thing, but I think with tech, still early. I think with technology coming in and doing so much so fast, especially with AI, people are forgetting that we as a civilization enjoy stories much more than we enjoy the technology part of it. And things are reverting. They're actually People are now looking at just storytelling as their biggest factor, and storytelling is the secret to marketing. One of the biggest misconceptions artists have about marketing is that it's all about selling. In reality, great marketing is often great storytelling. People don't just buy songs, movies, books, paintings, or products. They buy into stories. They connect with journeys, struggles, victories, lessons, and experiences. When artists learn how to tell authentic stories, they stop feeling like they're promoting themselves and start building meaningful relationships with their audience. So this is a very important thing, because one of the things that I've always loved about artists is to go back and to see, why did they write that song? How did they write that song? What was their upbringing? How did they maneuver through the industry at an early age? And how did they overcome obstacles? What were the stories of the artists that I love, whether they're filmmakers, art, musicians? I love to hear these stories. And even till this day, whenever I remember my grandpa who passed. He was 95 years old when he passed. But I used to have him tell me stories about when he was in Puerto Rico and growing up, and when he worked at the at a he worked in a hotel here in the laundry room of a hotel in New York City, in America, here in the States. And it was wonderful hearing some stories. He told me some pretty incredible stories, and it was just um, an amazing journey that he would take me on. And so stories are important. Stories are biblical, right? That's how we inspire people, is through storytelling, right? And the most successful artists understand that fans want more than finished work. They want to know what inspired the song. This is why a lot of those things that we go to, the writers' rounds, are so popular in Nashville, because you get to go around, hear the song, and then you get to hear the story of how the song was put together. They want to know what inspired the song, what challenges were faced during the creative process, and what experiences shaped the artist's perspective. Storytelling allows audiences to see the person behind the art. It creates emotional connections that turn that can turn casual listeners into loyal supporters. People may discover your music because of a song, but they often stay because they connect with the story. I'll give you an example. For me personally, is like the Grateful Dead, a band that I never really was into all growing up. I knew all the popular songs. I knew Truckin', and I knew the Shades of Grey, and I knew those popular songs, but I didn't know really much about them. I knew that they were a popular band, didn't understand them. And one day I was watching, I love documentaries because I love to hear the story of the artist, as we're talking about here. And I went onto some platform, and I saw that there was a documentary there on Bob Weir, who passed earlier this year. And Bob Weir was one of the founding members of the Grateful Dead, along with Jerry Garcia. And again, not knowing anything, but I said, "Hey, you know what? Let me just watch this. Let me watch this documentary about Bob Weir and just see what, get a little bit of background, just to give myself musical knowledge." And because I do these kinds of shows and I interview a lot of legendary musicians and artists, I figured let me learn about this so if the conversation ever comes up, I'll have a little bit of something to say. And it's always good to educate yourself in all different subjects. So when you come to the table, you have something to you can contribute. You may not be an expert, but you have a contribution to the conversation, right? And so I thought, okay, so let me watch this documentary. And by the end of the documentary, I was not only a Bob Weir fan, but I was a Grateful Dead fan because I saw all the things that they went against. They went against the system. They kind of built their own little following. They didn't have much, yes, there was some things that I disagree with, like drug use and things like that. It's not, although towards the end of his life, he was, they were pretty clean, but it was interesting to see the journey, to see that journey, and to hear the stories of what went on during that time. And I became a Grateful Dead fan. Matter of fact, I dove into the music. This was years ago. This was at least maybe 5 years, maybe before we even moved to Nashville. I don't remember exactly. It might have been about 6 years ago, or whenever that documentary came out. It was on Netflix, I believe. And I was just really impressed with his ability to be so relaxed in such a chaotic world. Maybe he was high. I don't know what the circumstances were. I'm not really looking at that part of it. I'm looking at the overall journey of it, and the stories that were told during this documentary to me were very, very fascinating, and I loved it. Storytelling. It made me a fan. It brought me into that world, a world that I was never in and not even interested in going. And I really just wanted to learn a little bit about the Grateful Dead. Suddenly, here I am consuming a lot of Grateful Dead music. Not only that, but also when John Mayer joined with Dead and Company, I became even a bigger fan because I'm a huge John Mayer fan. So that brought me really into the fold, and I'm a big fan now. Storytelling, very, very important. Um, As a filmmaker, interviewer, talent manager, and event organizer, I've learned that nearly everyone has a story worth telling. This is true. Some of the most compelling stories don't come from celebrity moments or major achievements, they come from everyday experiences, setbacks, risks, lessons learned, and moments of personal growth. When artists become comfortable sharing these authentic experiences, they create content that resonates because it feels real rather than manufactured. There's so many bands right now. My cat flipping out. There's so many bands and so much music and so much artists that it's just a spectacle now. You don't get really to know much about the artist. You don't really get to see where they came from or anything like that. It's sort of like here they are, and there's manufactured music. It's a lot of it is dark and depressing. Also, you look at some of the modern stuff that's out there now. Some of the top, I guess you would say top 40, I guess. Um, and it's not it's not engaging. It doesn't really bring me into want to know the story, and storytelling is just not really there. It's just this machine that kind of throws out this stuff, and now there's AI music that's even worse. It's just pretty sad. I'm gonna give right now at the end of this 10 ways to use your life to tell great stories. I think this is an important thing. Um, in today's world, storytelling can be shared through videos, interviews, live streams, social media posts, podcasts, performances, and conversations. So many ways to tell stories today. I mean, it's unbelievable. We're spoiled and we don't even know it because the platforms come and go. Then they change, they get ruined, right? They ruin themselves, right? They kind of saturate themselves. They start adding more ways of trying to make money, and then people just leave and they get bored. So this is what happens to the platforms. It's happened so far to almost all of them. I think the only one that I won't even mention the platforms because you can't mention a platform while you're on a platform. You can't mention another platform because that platform gets jealous because these platforms have not been raised properly with good parents. they go through all jealousy and stuff. Um, so authentic storytelling builds trust, creates connection, and gives audiences a reason to care. In many ways, storytelling is the bridge between creating great art and building a community around it. So true. So true. Funny how it seems. So true. Funny how it seems. Always in time. Remember that song? But never head over heels. Sorry. What's the name of that song? This is the sound of my soul. This is the sound I wanna take it to the world. I'm gonna keep going now. True. That's the name of the song. True. By something ballet. All right. So 10 ways to use your life to tell great stories. Number one, share your beginnings. This is the simplest one. Talk about how you got started and what inspired your creative journey. I always tell the story about my first guitar, right? I used to play a broom. I had a broom and I'll pretend. And I was told this, right? I don't really remember this. I do remember taking rubber bands and putting them around a box, an open like a shoe box, and then using the vibrations and as like a guitar. And my grandfather went out when I was about 9 years old and purchased a beautiful classical guitar for me, Spanish classical, and that's how I learned. That's how I started playing when I was 9, and I loved it. It was just the greatest thing. I didn't even know he was going to do it. He's looking at all these guitars, and I'm looking at them like, "What is he doing? Is he going to buy me a guitar?" And and they brought it down, and he said, "Here, do you like this one?" And I was like, "Yes, I love this more than anything." And then he bought it for me, and I was so happy because he got to hear me not only play, he heard me recording and on recordings on record things. He heard me play live. And it was really a that special moment of he was my grandfather, but he was really my father because I never really met my dad. So he was really my father. He raised me as almost like his son, and I called him Pop. I call him Pop. Because he was grandpa. But I didn't call him abuela. I call him Papi. Because he was my pops. And it was an amazing uh, opportunity for me at that age to be given such encouragement. My great grandmother, my grandfather's mother, came from Puerto Rico one summer, and she would always come. And whenever she came, it was sort of like the queen was arriving. She was like, we had to get the rocking chair, had to be reupholstered. We had to get all the right foods. We had to get the right coffee. Everything had to be perfect because Abuela was coming, right? And that was a big, big deal. And I remember when she called me over, she was sitting on the rocking chair, and she called me, and I must have been. I mean, I'm short now, but the actual hand of the rocking chair was what I bought here, And so she called me over. It must have been like I don't know 5 maybe, and she said, "Let me see your hands." So she looks at my hands and she goes, "Oh," she goes, "Yep, he's gonna be a musician. Yep, he's gonna be a guitar player." And I don't know if she really saw something or if she just wanted me to be a guitar player or um because I don't know if my grandfather he must have remembered that and decided to buy me one at some point. But it was that moment that I kind of got the blessings, so to speak. And then my grandfather bought me that guitar, which changed my whole life. It literally saved my life. Playing music saved my life. you know so that's my story. That's one of my stories. I have a more elaborate one. I have more details that go into the story, but number one here, use your life stories. I just used mine in a short form for you. Share your beginnings. Number two, tell stories about challenges. Well, people connect with struggles because they face their own, right? So share those struggles, share those challenges. Stories about how you overcame those challenges. When I was poor, I grew up in the South Bronx, with a violent neighborhood. By the age of 15, I had already witnessed a lot of violence, the worst that you can imagine, that ended in the worst possible thing. That you can't say certain words here, but it was not a good situation. And I was able to overcome that. through music and through really storytelling and watching stories and being fascinated with the art, with art in general, really saved me. Number three here, I don't want to tell a story on every single one because we'll be here all day. So number three is share lessons you've learned. So every mistake contains a lesson that could help someone else. Share those lessons. Very important. Number four, talk about turning points. Talk about the moment that you remembered when things changed. You know, when things changed, when things shifted and you became more aware, when you became more in present moment, you know, moments that you remember thinking you knew what you wanted to do in life, or at least you had an idea, or you had a vision, you had a dream. Talk about those moments, those turning points that you really, really fell into, which is always fascinating for me to hear. Number five, highlight the people who helped you. There are people around. I just talked about my grandpa, right? He was one of the first influences, music. And then I had uncles that used to play. So my uncles taught me my first couple of guitar chords. I remember watching Mr. Rogers on PBS. Mr. Rogers was a huge influence on me growing up because my grandmother was told, I'll tell this quick story, but PBS came out pretty much when I was very young. You know, the one here well, not here. I'm in Nashville, but when I was in New York, and someone told my grandma that it's educational television. So me being whatever age I was at the time, four, three, four, from one to about whatever 9 or 10, she would always just turn on PBS when I was very young, and that's all I ever watched was PBS. And so I would watch all the shows, Mister Rogers, Electric Company, Sesame Street, and that was my. Of course, she would never change it back to anything. So then it would actually change back. It would go into adult programming like Wall Street Journal and all these other the McNair report, the McNeil and Lear report was just a business and about a political show. So I learned a lot about politics unintentionally at a very young age because she would just leave it on. But Mr. Rogers was a big influence on me. I always felt like he was talking to me. And that was his point. He wanted to make it feel that way, and he succeeded. So that was the people who helped me: my grandpa, my grandma, my mom, and talk about that. That's a very good way to get people and to tell good stories. Number six, take people behind the scenes. Show them what things are like behind the scenes when you're working. Either you're working on a film, you're working on a TV, on a film, on a song. Show them how you structure songs. Show them your gear. If you have music equipment, like I have here, my Fender Telecaster, my Fender Tone Master, my Boss amp. I have it right here. I do some playing. I don't play enough as I should, but I do play. And take them behind the scenes. Show them that. Show them your speak, what kind of mic you have, what kind of all the stuff that you're working on. Show them. Take them behind the scenes. Um, Share unexpected. Number seven is share unexpected experiences, things that surprised you. And you're like, wow, I had no idea that was going to happen that morning, And I've had a lot of stories like that of where I got pulled into incredible opportunities and stories and things that I had no idea were going to happen to me that morning. And it was just a wonderful thing to experience. So share those stories. Number eight, connect stories to a larger lesson. The best stories don't just entertain, they teach or inspire. Connect stories to a larger lesson. So that's really important. Number nine, be honest and authentic. Don't come out here trying to be a thing. I try really hard. I've tried for a very long time. It took me a long time to not come up here and be like, hi, welcome in everybody. I hope, and try to, I don't know, try to do something. Now this is when you talk to me, if we ever have coffee together somewhere, this is what you're gonna get. I'm gonna talk just like this. I talk like this. And sometimes I say things funny, sometimes they're not that funny. Sometimes people roll their eyes at things I say. It's okay, man. Just be you, be authentic and be honest. When people say, do you like doing this thing that you're doing now? You can say, no, I don't. Like if I had a job that I don't like, I say, nah, I really don't like the job. I'm doing it because I need money. Some of the consulting jobs I've done recently, Nothing against the companies, and that's my profession, and this is what I do. I do consulting for social media marketing, video content. Do I like doing that kind of stuff? Not in particularly, but it does pay money, and I need money. Be honest. I'm honest. It's like, and at least it keeps me working with equipment and keeps me somewhat. So that's how I justify it. You know, make it as best you can. People can usually tell the difference between genuine story and a manufactured one. Make sure your stories are real. don't don't be just making up stories. And then one day the dragon appeared, and I had a huge sword. And I remember me and Tomas were fighting this dragon till, don't do that. Number 10, keep a story journal. I don't do this. This is here because I know a lot of people do it and it could be helpful to you. I do have, I don't know if this is a journal, but I do have this where I write my things I'm working on, but not necessarily my thoughts or anything like that. I don't do that. But here, it says write down interesting experiences, conversations, challenges, and ideas as they happen. Today's small moment could become tomorrow's great story. You know, I should probably do this because it is kind of a cool thing to have a journal, and I don't really document them. I document on my show. I have a lot of stories on my show that I tell. I have hundreds of episodes. I've interviewed hundreds of guests, and I've told stories on there. So they are documented in some way. But having a journal, maybe I'll even go out and buy a journal and start journaling at my age now because I think it's still a cool thing to do. I don't do it now, but I think it's a good idea. All right. Closing thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for hanging in here. I hope this information is useful for you. I hope you can tell your stories. Let me know in the comments below. Please share and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on this subject, and let me know some of your stories. And let me know if you want to come on my show and tell a story. I'm always I'm looking for other ways to make content, and if I want to do shorter episodes where they're just 10 minutes of a story, someone telling their story. And if they think it's an interesting story, they tell me the story. I think, hey, that is a good story. Let's do a show. And we'll do a 10-minute show. Maybe I'll do something like that and call it 10 minutes with 10 minutes of a story or whatever. I'll figure out some title. All right. Every artist already has a lifetime of stories available to them. The key is learning to recognize them. Your experiences, successes, failures, adventures, and lessons are not distractions from your art. They are often the very material that makes your art and your marketing meaningful. This is so true. You have to be in the present moment. This is why I always tell people when you're going through something, stop for a second to take in the fact that you're going through it. You're alive, you have oxygen in your lungs, you're given an opportunity to handle this thing. And that, my friends, is so important to really be able to capture that moment and say to yourself, I am in the present moment. I'm going through this right now that sucks. I'm taking a deep breath. And I've gone through some challenges that I got to tell you, I have not done this because it is just too challenging. So I'm not talking out my butt here. I'm talking out of experience. But I am saying that when I have done that and I've gone back even to moments that were painful and I say, what can I learn from that? A whole story emerges from there. And something that I not only can I use to inspire someone else and to help someone, but I can use it as a lesson for myself. What can I do better? How can I behave better? How can I react better in a situation like this? Massively important in when you're really in when you really have to confront something that's really painful. All right, friends, thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate you all so much. We'll be here tomorrow morning. Tomorrow's show, we're going to talk about, let's see here. We're going to talk about building a live stream show from scratch. And this is what I've done. Again, I'm doing the 20 episodes on the JHS Talent Management is my story, the story behind how it all started, and storytelling and is a major part of it. That's why we're doing today's show. And Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the live stream and how do I set it up and what did I do and how what were my lessons and how did I manage to get it to this point, and I want it to go to the next level. We have a show, Wellness Talk is also on Sunday nights. You can check that out, and that's a lot of fun. I co-host that with George Batista, and we have a tremendous time, a lot of fun. And then I'm here Monday to Fridays doing this. So with a lot of content, hundreds of episodes. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. All right, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all. God bless you all. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. We're all we got on this little blue marble floating through space. God bless you. See you tomorrow morning. And as always, peace.